and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I'm Dave and this is another video talking about guitar hardware, and today we're going to be talking about scale length. Now, scale length's got nothing to do with musical scales. Scale length, what we're talking about, is the scale length of the guitar, namely the distance from the nut to saddles. So the scale length of a guitar, this is a Fender Stratocaster, and in common with most Fender guitars it's got what we call a scale length of 25.5 inches. Which means if you took a ruler and you measured from where the string passes over the nut down to where it reaches the saddles, it's 25.5 inches. In fact, we call that a nominal scale length because if you look at the saddles, they're not lined up in a nice uniform line. Because of sort of things to do with physics and the way strings vibrate and keep the guitar's tuning and intonation right. Different strings are slightly longer or slightly shorter than others, so we'll call having the intonation set correctly. But we'll call the nominal scale length is 25.5 inches to here, and then the strings are string lengths are adjusted slightly to get the intonation right. So, but don't worry too much about intonation for this video. If you want to know about intonation, I've done a separate video which I'll put a link to in the information section down there. But anyway, 25.5 inch scale length, nominal scale length, which is the length of the string basically. And why does it matter that you know that? Well, if you've got a Fender Stratocaster and you play it, the fact that it's got a 25.5 inch scale length isn't really that significant. Understanding scale length though becomes useful when you move from one guitar to another, because not all guitars have the same scale length. So like I say, this is a Fender Strat, 25.5 inch scale length, what we sort of refer to as a Fender scale length because Fender popularised it. But there are other scale lengths like this Epiphone Wildcat. So this guitar I picked up a little while ago. Quite enjoying it. Completely different to the Fender Strat in, well, pretty much every way. Different construction, different pickups, different bridge, different profile on the neck, and significantly in the context of this video, it's got a different scale length. It's got what we call the Gibson scale length of 24.75 inches from nut to bridge. We call it the Gibson scale length because Gibson traditionally have used a 24.75 inch scale length on their guitar. So if you pick up a Les Paul or an SG or something like that, it's a 24.75 inch scale length. So for all this is an Epiphone, still refer to it as the Gibson scale length as opposed to the Fender scale length of 25.5. So that means the distance between nut and bridge is shorter. It means the frets are slightly closer together compared to a Fender, but to be honest, not so much that you'd immediately notice in playing it. Where the difference really becomes noticeable is the string tension. So if you think about when you tune a string to pitch, there's three factors that come into play. There's the tension in the string, there's the thickness of the string, and there's the length of the string. So if you have a guitar, say like your Fender guitar probably came from the factory with 9 to 42 gauge strings, you tune that up to normal E tuning, there's a certain amount of tension in each of those strings. If you use the same gauge strings on this guitar, tune up to the same pitch, there'll be less tension in the strings because that scale length is slightly shorter, so you need less tension to get to the same note pitch with the same strings as you do on the Fender. So that means when you pick this guitar up, it just feels different in terms of the amount of resistance you get from the strings. There's less tension there, so it's a lot easier to bend, and it feels different to the Fender. And the reason I mention this is because sometimes people will go from one guitar to another, and it just feels different. It just feels weird, and you can't quite understand why. And it might be that you're used to playing a guitar with one scale length, and you go to something with a different scale length. If it's got the same gauge of strings, there's less tension. So what you typically will do, and this is something what I do, I use a hybrid set of strings on my Fenders. I use 9 to 46s. I actually use a set of 10s. So I use slightly thicker strings on the Epiphone. So being thicker strings, they need a little bit more tension to get to the same pitch. But because it's on a shorter scale length, it's getting closer to the tension that I would have with a set of 9s on a longer scale length guitar, if that makes sense. So really, it's just to make you aware that there is a difference in scale length between different guitars. Most of the time it really doesn't matter to you. You're not going to make a distinction of like, oh, I play 25.5 inch scale length guitars, or I play 24.75 inch scale length guitars, or I want to play something in between, like PRS guitars, about 25 inch scale length. It's not so much about finding a scale length that suits you. Like I say, you just in normal playing you tend not to notice the difference. But what does matter is the kind of strings that you select for that guitar. And I know so many people who have started learning on a Squier Strat because Fender do some brilliant like starter packs, so they learn on a Squier Strat with a little Fender amp. Then they upgrade to something like an Epiphone, like an Epiphone Les Paul is an excellent second guitar. But if you've got that Fender guitar with 9 to 42 gauge strings, you think, okay, I play 9 to 42 gauge strings. Upgrade to something like an Epiphone Les Paul, put your 9 to 42 strings on, and it'll just feel a little bit different to play. And it's more than just the neck profile; it's the way the guitar kind of interacts with your fingers. You know, the way the strings fight back when you bend a string or whatever. And that's because the shorter scale length, what you might want to consider doing is actually going up to a slightly heavier gauge string. Or going the other way, if you started learning on something like an Epiphone with the Gibson scale length, and then you move to a Fender, you are going to notice the difference that the strings on the Fender guitar just feel that little bit tighter, and you'd want to go to a lighter gauge string. Be careful though, I wouldn't recommend going anything lighter than a 9 on the top string. So if you're used to playing 9s on the short scale length guitar, don't be tempted to go to 8s on a longer scale length. 8s really, they're just that little bit too light. A lot of to do with string gauges is personal preference, but 8s are pretty skinny. Arguably you aren't going to get such good tone, but they are going to snap a little bit easier. So what you might want to consider doing is, stick with 9s on the Fender, but consider going up a string gauge to something like a 10 on the Epiphones, or the Gibson scale length. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I was talking to somebody the other day about like the way that guitars feel in the hand, because it's an incredibly organic experience, and the way that the strings feel under your fingers. And we kind of got onto the subject of string gauges and string tension and whatnot. And thought, haven't made a video about this yet, so I thought I'd do. And I just have, so too late to stop me. That's that. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, please subscribe down there, and hit the bell notification icon thing if you want to be notified of new videos that I upload onto the channel. If you've got a question about guitar gear, music theory, playing guitar, about PhatPhish, the product, anything like that, then if you go here, fill the form in, send your question in, I'll try and get around to answering it in a future video. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video next time. Bye for now.